The aggression committed by Israel must be condemned, not only because no state has the right to annex foreign territory, but because every expansion is an experiment to discover how much more aggression the world will tolerate. The refugees who surround Palestine in their hundreds of thousands are now well into the third decade of their precarious existence in temporary settlements. And I've just come back, by the way, from Jordan, where most of the population, I think, are either Palestinian refugees or descendants of refugees. Russell continues, the tragedy of the people of Palestine is that their country was given by a foreign power to another people for the creation of a new state. Now, Russell doesn't mention it, but I'm sure he's referring to the Balfour Declaration of 1917, of course, issued by the British government. The result was that many hundreds of thousands of innocent people were made permanently homeless. With every new conflict, their numbers have increased. How true that is still. How much longer is the world willing to endure this spectacle of wanton cruelty? And what would he have made of the images we see today on television and online and Twitter? It is abundantly clear that the refugees have every right to the homeland from which they were driven. And the denial of this right is at the heart of the continuing conflict. No people anywhere in the world would accept being expelled en masse from their own country. How can anyone require the people of Palestine to accept a punishment which no one else would tolerate? A permanent just settlement of the refugees in their homeland is an essential ingredient of any genuine settlement in the Middle East. So notice how here for Russell, a just settlement is the key point here. As a philosopher, very concerned with justice, not just expediency, but with a right and proper outcome. He continues, we are frequently told that we must sympathize with Israel because of the suffering of the Jews in Europe at the hands of the Nazis. I see in this suggestion no reason to perpetuate any suffering. What Israel is doing today cannot be condoned. In other words, it can't be approved of. This is in 1970. And to invoke the horrors of the past to justify those of the present is gross hypocrisy. Not only does Israel condemn a vast number of refugees to misery, not only are many Arabs under occupation condemned to military rule, but also Israel condemns the Arab nations only recently emerging from colonial status to continued impoverishment as military demands take precedence over national development. And he concludes, Bertrand Russell, in the final paragraph of this incredible letter. All who want to see an end to bloodshed in the Middle East must ensure that any settlement does not contain the seeds of future conflict. Justice, this word again, justice, requires that the first step towards a settlement must be an Israeli withdrawal from all the territories occupied in June 1967. A new world campaign is needed to help bring justice to the long-suffering people of the Middle East. End quote. So that's an extraordinary message, his last message that he ever wrote. The day he died, the day after he died, this was read out to the Egyptian people. And how fresh, how relevant, how timely still, 50 years later or so, these words still seem today. And I think this could be read out still today. And I think if he'd seen this, what was happening in the occupied territories in Gaza today, he would have been horrified, of course, and would have wrung his head in shame. Nothing really has changed on the ground. So I just wanted to share those words with you to show that there were some very prominent British intellectuals, public figures in the past who stood up for justice, who stood up for the rights of the downtrodden, for refugees, for the oppressed, the dispossessed. It's not just a recent thing. And I do recommend also, if you want to read more, this book by Israeli historian Ilan Pappé called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine.